Are we supposed to enjoy life? The answer is yes. If yes, then how is everything for Hashem? In other words, if I'm supposed to enjoy life, how is Hashem supposed to enjoy the same life? If yes, then how is everything for Hashem? Like, what about us? In other words, if it's for me, it's not for him. If it's him, it's not for me. Okay, now listen, it's a great question. And if not, then what do we gain either way? In other words, if I'm not supposed to enjoy life, so I'll gain pfeifen. What the human beings gain from being in this world is everything is for Hashem. Okay, chavre, kinderlach. What I'm about to tell you is the God's honest truth. And I think you know it. But it's the ultimate test of America. And it's not just the test of America, it's the test of the West. If you live in Australia, you have the similar test. Even if you live in Europe, which is not as rich as Australia in the thinking, you have a similar test. Even today, you live in Israel, you can have this test. You need to understand something, people. It's only in the very, very recent past that so many people are in a position to actually have pleasure from the physical world. If you go back 150 years, okay, 95% of the people, 98% of the people, I'm going to use this word for lack of words, okay? They were poor. And they worked very, very hard to stay alive and to keep their families together and all these kinds of things. Now, I'm not saying that their lives were poor. I'm saying that their wallets were empty. They may have had very rich, beautiful lives, beautiful familial lives, close relationships with their husbands and wives, close relationships with their parents, close relationships with their children. But life was hard for most people. You need to understand what's going on. There is a new test that the humanity faces. All 7.5 billion, with a B, of us, face a test that's historically unprecedented. Most people in this room, by the standards of the 19th century, are pashut rich. Now you may not think you're rich, because rich means having more than the guy next door. But the way we live, the homes we live in, the cars we drive, the clothing we wear, the food we eat, and the spare time, the leisure time, the time that we had that we don't have something to do, like work, is unprecedented. It never existed before in history, never. Okay? So what has this created? What has this onset of unprecedented wealth? I understand it's complicated. It's complicated for many reasons. First of all, not everybody's rich. And second of all, there are such things that money can't buy, like disease, like psychological illnesses, like not getting along with your husband or your wife. These are problems that you can't solve with money. But we in the modern world, in America today, and it's not just in America, but it's particularly in America, by and large have extra time, extra money, too much food, too many clothes, too many rooms in our house, and here's what the deal is. This is the part that I think, if I ever teach you anything, if I can teach you this, I'm a successful teacher. Kinderlach. Life is not about entertainment. That's the word I'm using, entertainment. If a person lives for vacation, if a person lives for the movies, if a person lives for music, if a person lives for going out to a club, if a person lives to go to nice restaurants and eat good food, it's a rachmanis on them. Because that's not what life is. You're supposed to enjoy life. But life isn't pizza. Life isn't steak. Life isn't an extra house in the mountains. Life are the things that are going to be hard even if you're a billionaire. Life is hard. Not because it's bad or mean, but because it's meaningful. You know what life is? Life is having a husband and being close to him. Now you're not married, but you've seen marriage, right? You grew up in a house with a father and a mother. Marriage is the hardest thing in the world. It's the hardest thing in the world. I say being married is harder than raising kids, and raising kids is hell. Forgive me. Being married, being close to a man as girls, or being close to a woman, I'm a man, is the hardest thing you'll ever do. It's very hard. It's not hard because you don't have enough money. It's not hard because there's enough time. It's hard because you have to work on yourself to allow that relationship to happen. And you have to find the kind of man who's prepared to work on himself for that relationship to happen. That is life. Life is your husband, life is your children, life is your parents, in that order. If you enjoy your husband, if you enjoy your children, if you enjoy your parents, you're living. If you don't have use for those things, either because you don't want to try, which today in America is very common. People don't want to get involved in these relationships because they're hard. They want life to be easy. Or as you'll hear very sophisticated men and women tell you, I'm 70 years old and I haven't grown up yet and I have no intention of growing up. This is something which people who are important are allowed to say. You're absolutely supposed to enjoy life, but you have to understand what life means. You have to understand what life means. Life doesn't mean fun. Life doesn't mean entertainment. Life doesn't mean more clothing, more food. It's never going to make you happy. Never. Life means the things that are real. And real means that no matter how rich you are, how powerful you are, they are hard. They're hard because they are about that terrible thing called working on yourself. You want to know when life begins? When you take yourself seriously. When you meet people, whether they're not from or they're inside our community and they're all messed up and they don't want to get married, they don't want to have children. Why? They have a lot of money, they have a great life. I knew a woman who divorced her husband and let him have custody of the kids. You know why? Because she wanted to sleep 12 hours every day. I knew when she was 60, she had the complexion of a woman of 35. She was a baby. She had the best life in the world. That's not life. That's not life. That's being a child. That's being a child. We, Baruch Hashem, I can't hear you.
For her, that was life.
I know, but that's a tragedy. See, here's the deal. It's such a tragedy. You know what's a tragedy? Because people cannot be happy with that. For a person to be happy with that means one of two things. Either they're lying, which is usually the case. Some of the richest people in the world are the most miserable. You cannot find happiness unless you appreciate the dirty word, responsibility. Responsibility, that's the definition of an adult. Responsibility means when I'm not in the mood of it, I can't run away. It's not like quitting a job. You can't quit life. Either you're not happy and you're lying about it, or you're never a child. You're right. And if you have a 70-year-old child, the beautiful thing about kids is they're happy. You know, one of the worst rachmaneses is the person who doesn't think it's a rachmanes on them. I hope you understand what I'm saying. I understand you. I understand what your argument is. But what I'm saying is the truth. We live in a world where around us, there are adult men and women, healthy, capable, great careers, lots of money, great friends. They're avoiding life. Life is family. Spouse, children, parents, in that order. You are a successful person if you get along with your husband, you raise healthy children, get along with them, and you get along with your parents. Now look at America. Look at Crown Heights. Many of us, a number of us, have failed marriages. And those who have failed marriages are estranged from their children. Now, I didn't say all your children are going to be from Chassidish. I said you can have close relationships with all your children. If your child is not from and you have a close relationship with your child, that's the way it's supposed to be. And last but not least, have a healthy, positive relationship with your father and your mother, which is, it should be the easiest thing in the world. It's the hardest thing in the world. See, and this, girls, is the answer to this question. The person asking this question, and you don't have to tell me who you are, when they say enjoying life, they mean fun. I want you to understand something, girls. When you're 9, fun is enough. Even now, fun is not enough. You're teenagers. You're still you're young. Even now, if you had a whole day and a whole night to have fun, after a few days, you'd be sick of it. When you were 9, you'd never get sick of it. In 10 years from today, it's going to depress you. It's depressing to have everything. Because a person was created to work. Not to make money. To make himself a mensch. To make himself grow up. So is a person supposed to enjoy life? Absolutely. But you have to define it. You have to define it. You have to define it. If you define life by career, in other words, that you get into out in a field that you love and you spend 18 hours there working at it because it gives you meaning, it makes you feel good about yourself. You can enjoy that, but that's not the life the Amish and the Torah say you should enjoy. And I argue it's not life at all. If you define life by Pashut having pleasure, people want to go to every restaurant in the city. People want to wear every outfit. People want to go to every show. People want to go to every vacation spot. They want to visit every jungle and every desert and every mountaintop and all these other things. They're very nice things to do as entertainment. When entertainment becomes life, you're not living. If you're rich and you're able to entertain the way, you will end up on drugs or disappointed. Because a human being will never, ever, not a Jew, a human being, be happy from that. Our machine is too sophisticated. Our neshama is too hungry. Girls, the only thing that's real in life is the things you work hard for. And really, the only thing you work hard for is yourself. Become kinder, become gentler, become more patient, become more generous, become more forgiving, become more compromising. Be close to people is the hardest thing in the world. And in our golden age of technology and communication, everybody has a million friends, nobody's close to anybody. When people talk about all the increase in mental illness, and they're blaming it on the vaccinations, and they're blaming it on the water, you know what the source of all this emotional distress is from? There's a lack of intimacy. You can be married to the same man for 30, 40 years and never feel close to him, because you don't get close to him. It's too hard. You'll be close to a stranger than to your husband, or to your children, or to your parents. This is the challenge of the modern world. What I'm saying to you, in other words, is, girls, the basic definition of a person will never change, no matter what kind of machines we create. Even if we create these artificial intelligence, these robots they're talking about. The basic definition of a person is never going to change. And the basic definition of a person is he has a soul. A neshama, and that soul needs voice. Girls, the soul doesn't need another piece of pizza. The soul doesn't need a new car, doesn't need a nicer phone, a better computer. The soul needs to be close to other people. The soul needs to give to other people. The soul needs to refine its character. The soul needs to establish principles and live by them. There is no shortcut to life. We live in a world where millions of people, millions of people have found a shortcut to life, and they celebrate it, they advertise it, they proudly display it, and they say, who needs the old life? Who needs marriage? Who needs family? Who needs loyalty, honesty, integrity, principle? What I am saying to you is you're watching the experiment unfold. It's going to blow up. It cannot last. There is no way for generation after generation of American to live on entertainment and pleasure. No way. It either ends in drugs, it ends in suicide, or it ends in religion. A person needs to have meaning. And meaning means he needs to look in the mirror. Your parents have a good relationship? Just say yes for fun, okay? I promise you it didn't happen easy. You were born seventh in the family. By the time you were born, your parents were married 15 years. By the time you were old enough to understand they're married 20 years. They fought plenty. They made mistakes. They hurt each other's feelings. I always tell my students, who in the world are you most likely to hurt? The person you're closest to. In other words, the person you're most likely to hurt is the person you love the most. Your husband, your children, your parents, in that order. How terrible is that? That's the way it is. And you hurt them, and they hurt you, and if you don't run away, and you stick it out, you have depth. That's life. That's pleasure. That's the healthiest and the most meaningful and the most realist life. Kinderlach, We still believe that. You're adults. You can choose any life you want. The school can keep you down about this and that and the other. Your parents keep it down. One day you're going to make your own decisions about your own life. And you're going to make this choice. I don't think you're going to make the choice that you're going to be completely frei, you understand? But there are people who are frum, who live secular values. Life is about entertainment, it's about restaurants, it's about clothing. And not only are you going to have fewer children, you're going to be less close to your husband. You're going to be less close. Sure, you'll be very close to your children. You'll send them to hockey, you'll send them to dance, you'll send them to art, you'll send them to literature, but you won't have 5 minutes for them. So you'll give your children nothing that's meaningful, yourself. And some of you are going to make that choice. And then you'll have to deal with the consequences. Our way of life is the best. I told this to a non-frum person. It never was truer that Judaism makes sense sociologically than right now. And he told me, you're right. Yiddishkeit protects us from this nutty world we're living in. We live in a world that's decided family, marriage, parents, children, spouse are not necessary. They're choices. What you don't understand is that those things are not about what I'm going to do with my life. It's what I'm going to do with myself. Hashem made us to get married and stay married. You know why? Because it's hard, not because it's easy. Now, why would Hashem want it to be hard? Why is Hashem mean, right? That's the cliche. Because that's the only way to become a mensch. It's the only way to grow up. It's the only way to learn what life is for a human being. So let me go back to your page and read it. Are we supposed to enjoy life? Of course, but what is life? What is life? When you meet women who are 60 and 70, they look very beautiful, look very, very young, and they have no children. Are you jealous? Or do you pity them? Think about that question, and I'm sure some of you are jealous. But it's a rachmanas on them. It's especially a rachmanas on them when they don't think it's a rachmanas on them. Because they have a better life. They haven't grown up. They're still 9. It's not life. It never is going to be life. Work for a person is not to make money. For most of history, it's been that way. Today, work is a choice for many people, and they must take it. A multi-millionaire comes to the Rebbe Daz. You see it on the video, and I've told this to you many times before. He tells the Rebbe the greatest story in the world. Him and his family built a huge multi-million-dollar business. I think they're selling watches. Doesn't matter what. Große Geschäft. They made tons of money. And they sold the business. They sold the business for I don't know how many tens of millions of dollars. A little while later, the person who bought the business from them ran the business into the ground. He had no way, he didn't know how to run the business, he destroyed it. So they came back to them, let's say a year after the sale, and they were going to sell it to them for like 25% of what they bought it. In other words, the guy was going to have the worth of his business plus the business. The guy messed up so bad, he was prepared to give the business back to them for chatzi chinam, almost for nothing, because he ruined the business. And this man comes to the Rebbe and says, should I buy my business back? So the Rebbe says, of course. So he makes the terrible mistake of saying to the Lubavitcher Rebbe, when is it enough? I mean, how much money is enough money? And the Rebbe says, there's no such thing. There's no such thing. A person has to work. Retirement means stopping to live. It's been proven by 1 million psychological studies. How many people do I know they retired 6 months later, the husband is dead, or dementia, and so on and so forth. It's so fast. And they still believe in retirement, and they still do it. Most people who retire slow down. And when they slow down, their body dies. So when are we, in America, there's certain things, there's apocryphsis, If you say there's no God, there's 7-7, they'll hit you, In America, certain things you're not allowed to say. Number 1, the retirement is bad. Retirement's a mitzvah. Number 2, that the reason to get married is because you fell in love with some whack job. You're not allowed to say that that's a bad idea. They're both terribly stupid ideas. You don't get married because you've fallen in love. There's no such thing. You go married so you should fall in love. It'll take you 25 years to fall in love. The love that's real, that's life, doesn't happen in 3 months. Doesn't happen because the person's exciting and entertaining to you. It's because you live together. So you're supposed to enjoy life, of course, but you have to define it. When you feel like you're a knight to Rachmanis, I was born Chassidish and Film, I could have been born like that. You don't understand how wrong you are. Because you were given the tools to live. Life was never meant to be easy, it wasn't. Now you see many people who found they're making it easy, but they haven't made life easy. They've avoided life. And I'm saying to you, don't do that. Now, if you accept my premise, and of course you're free to do whatever you want, you can hold your hand up, you can keep it up if you want. I'm not answering you, but you can hold it up if you want. I'll get to your question soon. Okay, if you understand what I just said, then this question falls away automatically. What gives you pleasure and what gives him pleasure, that means the Eibishter, are exactly the same. Hashem wants you to enjoy life, but Hashem wants you to create it. The only way to have life is to create it. And it's hard. It's hard, and the hardest part of it is looking in the mirror, fixing yourself. If you create a successful life, Hashem is delighted. Because a successful life is a meaningful life. A successful life is a positive life. A successful life is a religious life. It's how Hashem made people. Even Goyim. Goyim are people. They're created in Tzelem Elokim. On this level, they have the same needs as a person. A person will never be happy from being entertained. Entertainment is important. I'm not saying you shouldn't have a trip, and you shouldn't go to a restaurant, you shouldn't buy a nice outfit. But that's not life. It's not. Life is your relationships. Life is letting yourself be close to your husband, to your children, to your parents. You're a successful person if those relationships are in order. Be'emes. It's hard. Not everybody succeeds, and it's not even always your fault. But that's your goal. And if you build that with your husband successfully, and it's very hard, it takes a very long time, you'll be so happy. And so will the Eibishter. In the end of the day, you'll be so happy. It's the only thing that's real. Okay, now go ahead, talk. Tell me what's on your mind.
But shouldn't there, you say that you don't get married because you're in love and you live together, that's the real authentic.
Do you live together so you should be in love?
Exactly, but what about the passion?
The passion is never a problem, you understand, for the first 6 months.
Right.
It's what happens after the first 6 months.
Right.
If the marriage was based on passion, the marriage is over.
Right.
But if the marriage was based on building, the passion grows over time. It's a different kind of passion. It's not, you don't show it off to the whole world. It's deep and meaningful and private.
Right.
The longer a couple is married, the more they love each other, and the less you know. And that's how it's supposed to be. It's not just because we don't want to be natsniistic, but because it's too precious to share. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Does anybody else want to speak? Yes, I know that what I just told you, this is what your whole life, your whole education is about what I just said in the last 20 minutes. It's hard. It's hard to accept. It's hard to agree with. It's hard to do. But trust me, it's worth it. Now, why should you trust me? Don't trust me. No, don't. You have to embrace it. In other words, this is not philosophy. I'm not teaching you an idea. I'm talking to you about your choices. You understand that the next few years you're going to make the most important choices you ever make in your life. And you're not going to be qualified to make these choices till you're 50, but you're making them now. Young people get married, certainly in our culture. Young people have no clue what marriage is. So why are they getting married young? Because the only way, when they get older, they figure it out. If you stay single till you're 35, you're already established as a big baby. That's what it is, a grown-up baby. And it doesn't change. You think people get older, they grow up? They just have more pleasure and look for more ways to entertain themselves. It's so unhappy. Ask them. They'll tell you. Ask them. Go ahead.
But like, even if someone, like, sort of based on like the original question, let's say someone, all their priorities are right and they know what life and happiness really is, if they're doing it, if they're doing all these right things and they're leading like a really good life, like according to all that you said, if they're doing it just for their own happiness and not for Hashem, isn't that still kind of like, I mean, obviously they have Hashem in their life and like whatever, but if they're still doing it like, I'm gonna like connect to my husband because I want to be happy instead of like because Hashem wanted me to. Is that like wrong?
Of course you're supposed to because of Hashem, right? And the smart guy will tell you that if Hashem is not involved, you're really not getting close to your husband. But halavai, we should have that problem. Halavai, that should be our problem. If we do all the right things and we have a selfish interest, it's not bad. Of course, you're supposed to do everything L'Shem Shamayim. How many people do? In the back of our mind, I'm doing it for the Eibishter, but I'm doing it for me. Of course you're doing it for you. But the Eibishter taught you this. And the Eibishter inspired this. And the Eibishter gives you koyach to deal with all the noise around you that tells you it's not worth it. There's so much Eibishter involved in you selfishly making right choices. If every person in the world did what I described for themselves, it would be a very good world. And there'd be plenty of God around, don't worry. I understand what you're saying, but I'm not backing you away from what I said. It's not a contradiction. You know, if you're the Rebbe, you have such problems. You know, it's total bittul, absolute bittul. We're not the Rebbe. Go ahead.
So in that case, like if those are the best priorities in life, then technically the Amish people are better off than us.
Ask them.
Like I recently, we went to Kalamai, we went to this Amish place, and
Right.
they seem a lot happier.
Right, they're very simple.
Not so bad. I mean,
It's like
They're very, very simple. Their lives are very simple. The advantage of living in the modern
we're
world.
very into working hard, family, and religion.
But see, but there's one thing you're forgetting. In the Amish, they have a philosophy, I don't know the word for it, but I read about it, where for 2 years they kick you out. And you do every Aved in the world. And you can imagine an Amish boy or girl has been living this cloistered life to go out into the big world and do whatever they want. At the end of those 2 years, you have a choice. Come back and be Amish or stay out there. Almost all of them choose to come back into the community. Almost all of them choose to come back into the community. Why do you think that is? Because they figure that out. Somebody once said to me, why don't Lubavitchers do that? Be fried for 2 years. It would heal a lot of illnesses. But we don't believe that the ends justify the means. You can't do an Aveda today, you should do a mitzvah tomorrow. It doesn't work that way. When you meet the Amish, I'm saying this, I'm not saying this as a rabbi, I'm saying this as a human being, okay? Their lives are very beautiful, but they're really very simple. They're naive. In their way, they're like children. They live in such a protected world where they don't face the world. We don't live like them. We did in the shtetl. Jews in the shtetl were as simple, they were as unsophisticated. We're very sophisticated. And we, for sure, Lubavitch. For sure, Lubavitch, it's the hardest life to be as Lubavitch. Because you have to be in all the worlds completely. But even other from people, except extreme communities, maybe Skver in Muncie, not Satmar, no way. We live in the big world. The big world teaches you 1,000 things. You're very sophisticated. You know so much about so many things. To have that much sophistication and still never forget the values of spouse, children, parents first is extremely hard. It's harder for you than for them because their life is simple. In other words, it's easier. Your life is very simple. You are very smart. You know tons of stuff. You know all the things that challenge this belief system. And if you choose this belief system anyway, it's a far greater accomplishment than for them. But they're very lucky. Of course they're lucky.
Yeah, but why is then not like, let's say you're saying our society is the real world. You're saying, we just said it's not. What matters most in life is family.
Spouse, children, parents, in that order.
So Hashem,
naturally, she's taking up the Eibishter's cause. Baruch Hashem. Thank God for filling that role. It's very important. Wait, listen to me. I'm not saying that you need anything more. I'm saying that we were thrown into this world, not by your own choice. You were born in 20-something, right? I was born in 19-something. You were born in 20-something. You're younger than I am. You were not born in a shtetl. You were born in a big city. You didn't have the option they have. Which means if you accomplish what they accomplished, what you did is much greater than what they did. Because you're doing it in the real world. To me, Chavra, this is Mashiach, this is Sheva Mitzvahs. This is exactly what we need to teach the world. If we would start teaching Sheva Mitzvahs, what do you think Sheva Mitzvahs is? Don't kill, don't steal, don't lie. Sheva Mitzvahs means you work hard, not just because you need money. Because it's a person. Sheva Mitzvahs is your wife, Sheva Mitzvahs is your husband, Sheva Mitzvahs is your children, Sheva Mitzvahs is your parents. If we could teach this to Goyim, Mashiach will come. I really believe this. I really believe this. And it's hardest for the smartest people with the most money living in the biggest cities. It's the hardest for them because there's so many distractions. But Mashiach means we're all going to do it successfully, even the richest, smartest people living in the biggest cities. You follow? You get my drift? You understand what I'm saying? Go ahead.
When you said spouse, children, parents, why is it in that order? Why didn't you say this?
The only part of what I said that's novel, the only part that I said which is a personal opinion that you could argue about, and I believe it from my life's experience, spouse before kids.
That's what I was going to ask you.
Kids before parents is a no-brainer. But I'm telling you, I'm married 33 years, and my wife, we've had our sons. I lost a child. My wife, we had our stuff. Okay? I am telling you, the hardest, the most important relationship in your life is your husband. I hope all of you never have any challenges. But you should know, and whenever I speak to people, I mean, I've been around the block, so sometimes I'm called to speak to people. I always say, the mashal, the mashal, you go on an airplane, and before the plane takes off, at the same speech, you've heard it so many times, you don't even listen anymore, right? But one of the things they say is, if the pressure in the cabin will drop, right? Continue the sentence. An oxygen mask will fall down from the ceiling above your head. Next. Pull it towards you. You know why I say pull it towards you? Because until you yank it, oxygen is not coming out. Put over your face and mouth and breathe normally. What do they say next? If the bag does not inflate, don't worry, the oxygen is still flowing. And then what do they say? When traveling with children, put on your own oxygen mask first, then mask yours. Why do you think they say that?
You need to be healthy and being able to...
A dead mother who had good intentions can't help her kids. You cannot help your child to help yourself. You know who knows this naturally, instinctively? Every species of animal. You ever studied animals? Animals do everything for their child, but they will not die for their child. And when the mother sees that it's the baby or themselves, in many cases they'll kill their children. They have this instinctive sense of survival. You see it amongst all animals.
Should never save their
at their own expense. At their own expense?
Like if a child is...
At their own expense? Never.
Oh,
I don't care what you think. I'm telling what Torah says.
Like a car is coming, your child's there, and you push your child away and you get hit instead.
Yeah, that's a human thing.
Again, you misjudged, you miscalculated. It is the all animals know the line. Animals do incredible things for their babies. When the animal knows that it's me and my baby, they put themselves first. It's a basic lesson in survival. And that's what they're telling you on the airplane. Put your mask on first, because if you're healthy, you can help your kid. If you're not healthy, you're not helping your child. Wait, let me just finish my thought. In concert with that comes the next statement. You are not you. You are the couple. You are you and him. It's like the spokes of a wheel. You have a wheel with many spokes, there's an axle. The axle is the marriage. When parents go through trouble, whatever it is, a sick child, financial troubles, very often the nature of people is they go away from each other. One of the highest sources of divorce is stress. And my message, and I believe it's a Torah message, is you need to put yourself first. I don't care how sick your child and how much you need him, you need to be a couple. And it's very hard, especially if you disagree, or especially if one of you can't handle it, in quotations. One of them pushes can't deal with stress. You need to retain the couple. That's how God made us. According to the Torah, a man and a woman is whole. A man without a woman is a half. A woman without a man is half. This is not a nice cliche. It's the truth. You know that according to the Gemara, Adam and Chava were created physically attached, like Siamese twins. One body. And then the operation separated them so that they could have a marriage. Panim upon him, face to face, rather than acha, back to back. Your husband is you. Your ability to retain that unit, according to Torah, is your definition and his definition. That's the part of this that I think people could argue about. But al pi Torah, there's no question in my mind this is true. Al pi Torah, in society, society is so messed up. But al pi Torah, number one, your spouse. Because that's literally you. Number two, your children. And number three, your parents. The second and the third, I think, are logical. It's the first one that you're contending. And it's the first one that I feel needs to be taught. Because people don't necessarily know it. And I think it's al pi Torah. In other words, that's just my opinion. I think that's what Torah holds. Anybody else? I mean it. Go ahead.
What about you're saying marriage is first, but what if marriage is hurting your children? Now, not always in an abusive situation. Abuse is clear, but in much more stickier situation where maybe with just with marriage you could pull through, but with the children, you can't. And it's picking your husband or your children.
I hope you never have that choice to make.
Maybe, but people do that.
Yeah. And then you need to have a lot of wisdom.
A lot of what?
I am not going to answer that question. You know why?
Case by case.
It's choice by choice. I am telling you that sometimes there are questions with no right answer. And this is one of them. That's how deeply I feel about marriage. The instinct is to put your kids first. And it's a good instinct. But this, I promise you, whatever choice you make will be the right one. No, this is when you say don't judge, this is where you don't judge. If chas v'shalom, a person is faced with two rights, and that's what this is. This is two rights. And they're mutually exclusive. And every right is going to hurt the other right deeply. This is where your education, this is where everything you learned in Torah comes into play. You can't make the decision scientifically. You can't make that decision with money. You have to make that decision with your guts. And whatever choice you make will be right. And the statement, don't judge, is here.
Your husband over your children. Your children are hopeless. Your children need
I'm not telling you, I'm not answering your question. You asked me what you should do. I said there are two rights. And I hope you never face such a choice. But people do. And some people make this choice, and some people make this choice. And they're both grown-up choices. They're both life choices. They're not baby choices. They're both deeply mature choices. I'll tell you my story, okay? Give you my example. We had a child who was very ill. And my wife wanted to keep him home. And I couldn't deal with it. I was less than 30. I was a young man. I was 32 years old. He ended up spending 2 years in the hospital before he died, but we kept him home. I, from that experience, developed this whole philosophy about when you have other children in the home and you have a sick child who's going to die. My son there was no way he was going to live. He had a terminal illness. You have to live your life and give the child up. And I had proofs from rabbis and from Mashpiyim and from the whole world. And then I met another person who had a similar situation. And I told him my opinion very forcefully, and he was very hurt. Because he made the decision to keep his child at home. And he basically built a hospital in his home and the whole 9 yards, and his other kids. And he had more kids than I had. He was older than I was. His other kids suffered. And I remember him saying to me, do not judge. Do not judge. And he said it with so much pain. And he was right. Both these decisions are correct decisions. Sometimes there isn't a right and a wrong. Sometimes it comes from the guts. And if you learn Torah and you learn Hasidus and you lived a good life I don't mean fun, a good life, a meaningful life, Hashem will help you to make what is for you at this time the better decision. But there's no right and wrong. I promise you, in such questions, whatever you do is right. And whatever you do is going to hurt I really hope nobody in this room ever faces that situation. But it happens. It happens. And in those cases, your whole Chassidische Chinuch, your whole Yiddishkeit, your whole Emunah, your whole Eibishter is the koyach, not just to make the right choice, but to live with the choice. Do you understand what I'm saying to you? It's becoming very grown up, this class. Okay, 2 minutes. Go ahead.
I still how can you see that, putting your kids before your husband, for example, let's say in the Holocaust, they would want to save their child's life because they know everyone's going to die. But if they have to choose between themselves and their kid, they're going to choose their kid.
No, they won't. No, they won't. If they're dead, their child is dead. Do you think they didn't understand that? What are they trying to do? Go to their grave feeling good?
No, let's say there's putting your kid in the forest, right?
Oh, you didn't say that. You said it was your life or your child's life. Giving up your child.
Yeah.
So you're not dying. You're giving away your ability to mother. You need to be clear on what the questions are.
No, but
If you're clear on what the questions are, you'll see that you don't really have a question. And by the way, the Holocaust is a terrible example. I want to finish this. You have to, if you will refine your question, in other words, ask it with your brain, not with your heart, almost always you'll know the right answer. Almost always. She brought up a question which is legitimately unanswerable. And there are such questions. There are. What is to pick between one child and another? Literally. I save this one or this one. What do? You eeny, meeny, miny, or mo. How do you do that? People face such situations.
okay, so that was a bad example. What I was saying before, if there's a car coming and you push your kid out of the way,
So what, you think you thought about it before?
no.
But if you would think about it, what would be the right thing to do?
I would still think to
You would
yourself
think?
or your child.
You wouldn't. I promise, most people wouldn't. When I read in the newspapers how a woman got pregnant and then she got cancer and she delivered the baby and died, I get so angry. My Amish get angry.
But how can you say that? Because
How can I say that? Because the Torah disagrees with it. And God is smarter than us.
but I'm saying
You know what the halacha is? If a woman is carrying a baby, and that baby is a risk to her life, that baby is called a roidif. He's called a murderer. That's the halacha. That's the beauty of Torah. It actually answers such questions. It doesn't answer her question.
let's take the baby out of the picture because that's a specific answer by the Torah. I want to know if this situation around this is also answered as clear cut. If someone else can raise your child and then you'll have a continuation of the family, you have, the child will continue.
I understand.
The
Torah says every human being has to put his life before someone else's life. That's what it says in Torah. And a mother and a child is that
Isn't
relationship.
that like what we mothers putting the child in front of them to save themselves? How can
That's
you
a very, very different question. Whoa. That's a very different question. Putting your child in front of you to save your life is not the same thing as dying so your child shouldn't die. That's killing your baby to save yourself. They're very different questions. That's not a fair comparison. You're not allowed to do that. You're not allowed to put your child in front of you. We're talking about a pregnancy. If you're carrying your child in your womb, and it's you or your baby, according to Torah, you don't have a choice. You don't have a choice. Of course, it's a different question. Okay, I'm sorry I got emotional. Never gonna happen again till Thursday. I'll see you then.